The only way they became manifested was because I did the work to get specific enough to own it and claim it, like say it out loud specifically, not like I'd like a dream house or I would, like an A-team, specific roles, specific locations, just getting really into the specifics of the bliss, seeing it, imagining it, feeling it as already done, and getting myself into a place of receivership so that I could actually receive whatever it was that lit me up. Hey, my beauty. Oh my goodness. If you have been around for a while and have been a longtime listener, first of all, I love you. I've missed you. It has been a year since I have published my last podcast. And for all of you who are brand new to the Divine Living community and have had our paths divinely cross over this past year, this is going to be your first new, fresh podcast. And so I'd love to warmly welcome you. I'm sure you have had quite a year like myself. And today's subject is all about fresh starts, haha, and beginning again. And something that I have noticed in my little podcast sabbatical here is I've been doing a lot of reading, and I have really been noticing all of the stories of super successful people who failed a lot. Stuff didn't work out. Businesses closed. They were hemorrhaging money. They made bad real estate investments, bad other investments. Got taken advantage of with like some people that were out of alignment or out of integrity. All these like really big stories, P.S. And what I noticed is there was one cookbook. I was, this past Sunday, I was sitting on my couch reading a cookbook, as I often do on Sundays. And the story of this particular chef that I was reading was talking about his journey from one culinary adventure to another. And he finally opened up his dream restaurant. And he gave it everything. And there was like nobody that came at the beginning, and then he got flooded and written up in like, all these like critically acclaimed places that you want to be written up if you're a restaurateur. And then he said as immediately as the crowds like came, they vanished. Anyways, he ended up hemorrhaging so much money that he had to shut down his business. And what I noticed was he went right on to the next thing. He was like, all right, well, what's the next opportunity? What am I going to do next? And I don't know about you, but when I've taken a hit, when something I touched didn't turn to gold, when I had a launch that didn't work out. For those of you that don't know, I had a luxury magazine for a while, which was amazing until it wasn't, financially anyways, and shut that down. I've uncharacteristically, unnecessarily, and very unspiritually let it affect my self-esteem, my self-worth, my like view of my capabilities for beginning again. So in case you have started something that didn't work out, or you're just so crippled with an idea that you want to get off the ground, but you're so afraid of that crippling fear that you're not even taking action on it, or because you put money into something in the past, you're afraid to now, or because someone told you you can't invest in yourself, whatever the story is. Or maybe even it's with your love life, maybe you've been married a number of times and you just are telling yourself the story that you can't do it again. And what I've noticed for myself and what I'm noticing with these super successful people that I'm reading about is successful people begin again. And spiritually, it really is ask and it is given. It doesn't say, well, you've like, you used up this many mistakes and like, I guess your hands are just tied until, it's time to go to the afterlife. And if we as women would activate more of the very alive spirit within us, that we're not perfect, we're not meant to be perfect, we don't have to be perfect, that's not even scriptural to be perfect. And quote unquote mistakes that we might be labeling that we've made, isn't it wisdom? Isn't it learning? Don't you know so much more than before you went through whatever that challenging time was? I know, even for me with the magazine, of course, I know how to have a better eye on what's a vanity project versus what's going to be monetized versus not everything I do has to be monetized. So I'm saying this to say that the time of this recording, it's the first month of 2025. It's the beginning of the year. And I want it to be the beginning of you beginning again. I know that I am preaching this message to myself, that I have, just like you, so many hopes and dreams inside of me and things that I've put on the back burner for so long and so many things that I said, well, when I ... I don't know what your excuse is. For me, it's like, well, when I get through the next launch, I will do the thing that I want. Or when I get through the next hire, or when I train the next person, or when I make the next amount of money. And some of you might be saying like, well, when my kid gets into this grade or turns that age, or when, the season changes. Like how many of us said like, oh, well, in January, when it was November, it seemed like it was so far away, but January was going to be that miracle month. Or maybe last September, you're like, next March is when I'm going to show up for myself. And it doesn't matter if it's love, if it's weight loss, if it's health, if it's fitness, if it's money making, leave the job, start the business, any of the bigger hope and dreams. What we have is today. And what I coach all of my clients on is I don't want you to just run around like a chicken with your head cut off. And I don't want you to not have foresight and a plan and an essence of what you're moving forward with. And successful people take imperfect action. Successful people leap and then the net appears. Successful people have an idea and then they figure it out along the way. And what I know for sure is that I would not be where I'm at today. Of all the things that I haven't manifested yet, with my big hopes and dreams that I still have, of everything that I have, paying off student loans, getting out of debt, moving initially to California, later on moving to Italy, buying my first piece of real estate, buying multiple pieces of real estate, having an investment property, having a team member and then team members, all the things that I have manifested along the way, hitting 6 figures, hitting 7 figures, hitting multiple 7 figures. None of it came from thinking it up. It came from a passion about having just the next level win. And I think that when we get too into the 1 year, 5 year, 10-year plan, when we get too into lining up all the ducks, when we have to know too much before we move forward, we stifle ourselves. And that includes, where's the money going to come from? Where's the time going to come from? How's this going to work out? Who can help me with this? And there's so much power in a decision. And the decision that I'm showing up here with today isn't even so much about actual tactical pieces. It's a decision to show up for yourself. It's a decision to really take a look at, what story are you living your life by? Are you living the story that you can't, that you're not enough, that you don't have what it takes, that it's going to take super long, be super hard, not worth it if you had to put all that time and money in, or that it's too expensive? Or are you living by spiritual principle? Are you living by you are inherently worthy? Are you living by delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart? Are you living by ask and it is given? Are you living by seek and you will find? Are you living by your problem is not that you ask for too much, but for too little? When you start to really investigate the uninvestigated beliefs, that's what I call them. I know that for myself, I'm like, what am I thinking? I forgot who I am. I forgot my power. I forgot what I'm meant for. I forgot who does need to hear this. One of my stories, and you'd think I'd know better 20 years into my career, P.S. There have been other moments when I sat down to record a podcast and get back into it. And I would have this niggling little voice of like, does anyone need to hear this? Like, doesn't everybody know all of this? Like, what difference is it really going to make? And somehow I would just talk myself out of it. Defying facts, by the way, defying data, and defying what I even knew in my heart. My podcast, before I stopped recording it last year, and for those of you who weren't around and were wondering, my father passed, and it will be a year ago this week. And I consciously took time off. I did the bare minimal fulfillment for a few months. And I did that consciously because I don't know, everyone handles grief differently, but I thought to myself, you only lose your biological father for the first time once. And I wanted to be present with my emotions and memories that came up and just the different waves of grief. And then that was fine. But, what happened was I created a new habit. And I created the habit of not using my talent in this particular way. It's not like I just checked out for the year. I did other things, but not this, which I so love. And I created the habit of not using my voice in the form of a podcast. And I created the habit of not making the time for this broadcast. And, the universe sends signs. And if you were one of these people that the universe used, I'd get the DMs, Gina, when's your podcast coming back? We'd get the emails, Gina, I miss your podcast. I'd get texts from friends that I didn't even know listen to the podcast. Gina, I miss your podcast. And I kept saying, yeah, I'm going to do it. And, the first quarter turned into the second quarter, turned into the third quarter, turned into the fourth quarter. And what I noticed is, like any muscle that's not used, it atrophies. And what actually atrophied were like my ideas, not really my talent, because the talent is within me and didn't go anywhere. But my ideas, my viewpoint of my self-expression, then I would tell myself these things like, I don't know, does this even matter? So what I was saying is before I stopped reporting the podcast a year ago, my podcast was in the top 0.5% of downloads globally. I don't know where it's at right now, and I haven't looked at a number. It's not even why I did it today. My point is, when we don't investigate the uninvestigated beliefs, we can tell ourselves stories that actually defy data. Of all the podcasts out there in the world, and if mine is in the top 0.5% of podcasts globally, I would say that's some sort of indicator that, I don't know, it's working, someone wants to hear it, someone needs it. And that's when we get into ourselves and we get into a funk, we make it more about us than a being of service. Who was I thinking about in that moment? When I was like, doesn't everyone know this stuff? Who needs to hear this? I wasn't really thinking about serving humanity. I was thinking about me and do I have what it takes, or am I interesting enough? And like that ego kind of stuff that doesn't serve me or anyone else. And I'm sharing this to say that I don't want to speak for other people, but I think it can happen to the best of us. But what I've found for my own life is it happens when I isolate It happens when I'm not around other super successful people and when I'm not in mentorship, being held accountable. Now, I am around successful people for other things. I am in mentorship for other areas of my business. But I got kind of isolated this year. And I've just noticed, and I know this, and you know this too, but like who we surround ourselves is just so important. And if I was around people specifically around the subject of the podcast, it wouldn't have gone this long. And whatever it is for you, if you're around people who are out there building their businesses and are getting success with it, you wouldn't sit in your own head that long. You wouldn't like stare behind your computer that long. You wouldn't scroll that long. You would get into action. If you're around other people who are showing up for themselves and like following a no matter what, no excuses policy, you're not going to let anyone say you don't have the money for that, or that you can't invest in that, or that's not how you should use your money or your time, this, that, and the other. I'm going to say this once. For those of you who are partnered and are hiding behind your man, that's got to stop. We can't move our lives forward, our dreams forward, when you are listening to someone else's agenda, ego, money, story, whatever the thing is. And I'm not even saying he has bad intentions for you. They might be so stuck in the subconscious that, like, I'm not here to analyze him. What I am here to say is any woman that wants to move her life forward in any way, shape, or form, that you've got a dream, and heaven forbid, it requires money, please don't say, we can't do this right now. That God's not saying that. And if you want to be a we, I would suggest partnering up with the divine, because you and God are a majority. But we can't do this, and it's not good for our family, and I don't have the money. What if you eradicated the phrase, I can't afford it, I don't have the money? Better yet, and I wrote about this in my book, when I stopped saying, and I promised myself I would never again say, I'd love to, but I don't have the money, my life changed. Because I showed up differently, and I followed a no excuses policy, and I lived more by spiritual principle. Now, let's be clear. Just because I eradicated the phrase, I'd love to, but I don't have the money, does not mean even that I currently have all of the money for all of my desires. I'm just not saying I'd love to, but I don't have the money. I'm not taking myself out of the game. I'm aware of the financial frequency of a particular desire, and I have plans, activation, forward movement in place for the funding of those dreams. That is am I an instant manifester in every area of my life to date? No. So, in some things, sometimes I can think about someone and they'll call immediately. Sometimes I can think about an opportunity that I'd like to have and it will show up pretty instantly. And other ones, I have to do the inner work. And I have to tend to that dream, and I have to really unhook any of the resistance, any of the doubt, any of the fear, any of the old stories of where I told myself I can't, or that's not for me, or it's hard, or whatever the complaining version is. And when you do the inner work, you get to outgrow complaining. You get to outgrow lack. You get to outgrow fear. And you get to outgrow boring conversations like, I'd love to, but I can't afford it. And though this conversation would have thoroughly confused the former Gina from Detroit, my 20-something-year-old self, I didn't know what else was possible. And so one of the reasons why I'm getting back into my podcast is because I have been gifted with too much. I do know what's possible. I do know how to manifest. I do know that all things are possible, that we can be, do, and have everything we desire. And I also know that because that is true does not turn the universe into our assistant or a catalog where it's like, I'll take one of those and 3 of these and 15 of those from any form of princess or an entitled kind of place. That to be the queen of your life, that it's really, really going deep about functioning by design, about getting into your true desires, and then understanding and shining a light on what are the stories you're telling yourself about those true desires. And I get it. It's not like this is the first time you've looked at it. If you're listening to this podcast, I doubt this is the first foray into personal development for you. And when I go and I take a look at, well, I've prayed, I've asked, I've believed, I've visioned, I've felt it, I've seen it as already done, right? We've like kind of run through the checklist. Well, if it's still a desire and it's still not manifested in the physical realm, not enough. Not enough. And that's not the bad news. That's the thing. I don't want you to get discouraged because something hasn't happened yet. I just want you to not give up. I want you to not give up on you, not give up on your desires, not give up on what's possible. So if you're in a place where you can write down what I'm about to say, I want you to write this down. If she can do it, I can do it. If she can do it, I can do it. That is not a place of compare and despair. That is not a place of jealousy. It is a place of inspiration to look at another sister on this planet, on the path, and be like, boom, she is trailblazing for me and my dreams and my desires. I don't know about you. I don't need to be the first to do it. I just need to have my desires manifested. I don't need to be the first American who bought a dream house in Tuscany. That doesn't matter to me. I don't need to be the first entrepreneur who makes a certain amount of money with a certain amount of time and money freedom. Or I don't need to be the first woman entrepreneur who gets her funnel in a certain condition with certain stats. I don't. If you got to be the first about something, check it out. If you're being divinely guided, fine. But if it's just an ego thing, I don't need that. I need to experience the contribution, the impact, the service, the bliss, the power, the abundance, the fun, the level of receiving that I would be in to have that already manifested. Feel into this one. Think about something that used to be the mountaintop manifestation, because P.S., you're already living the dream in some way. I remember when the dream used to be married to my soulmate. Now, Glenn and I have been together since 1812. It's like, I forget that used to be the dream. I remember when the dream used to be so many things that I'm currently living. Having the A+ team that I have, knowing what I wanted to do, having clarity on that, having the ability to travel and travel first class, have multiple homes, like so many things used to be the dream. And the only way, being a published author, like having a podcast, the only way they became manifested was because I did the work to get specific enough to own it and claim it, like say it out loud specifically, not like I'd like a dream house or I would, like an A-team, specific roles, specific locations, just getting really into the specifics of the bliss, seeing it, imagining it, feeling it as already done, and getting myself into a place of receivership so that I could actually receive whatever it was that lit me up. And you've done this. I'm not teaching you this. Maybe you didn't have like the steps all laid out consciously like that. But anything that you have manifested, that is the process that you went through on some level. And if you've done it before, you can do it again. And if someone else can do it, you can do it too. And so for us to just get into so much love for life and so much gratitude for the divine and the power and the talent, like the fact that we even have this particular desire probably indicates that you're living in like the top 3% of humans globally. The fact that we would know how to do it, and when I say how, like the principles of manifestation, that doesn't necessarily mean you know specifically how to make the money or how to start the business, or those kinds of hows are up to the universe. But the fact that you know how to manifest means that you know how to get yourself into the place of the feminine. Because pounding the pavement and going into massive action, the guys can do that. You can do it too. You're just going to blow out your adrenals, and it's not going to be as joyful and pleasurable and as into your feminine essence of receiving as it could be. And please do not mistake femininity for being weak, soft, or any form of passive. This way of calling in our desires, this way of getting the breakthrough, this way of illuminating what's next, if you're going to do it from the feminine way, usually it comes through people, because the feminine is about relationship. I mean, think about it. If you want a certain amount of money, it's not just going to fall out of the sky, though God has that capability. That's not been my experience. It's come through other humans. That I'd get a call from someone, I'd get invited to something, I'd have a conversation with another human, and somehow some form of a transaction took place for that money, for that energy to flow through. And when we don't have to just rely on ourselves and sit behind our computers in isolation or think that it's got to be all up to us to pound the pavement to move it forward, life gets so much more fun, so much more blissful, so much more creative, and so much more financially abundant. And so much of my Divine Living podcast, of which you will be seeing or hearing, you're probably not going to see me because I don't tend to do a visual format of it, only because I don't like to always like have the perfect lighting and hair and makeup and all that kind of stuff, but you will be hearing from me more. And one of the reasons why I am so lit up about empowering women through financial success is because of who I became and who I've seen countless clients, thousands of clients in over 100 countries, who they've become in the process as well. And who we become are women who are powerful and insightful and contribute incredibly to humanity and have fun while we're doing it. And we usually have a pretty great sense of humor too. And that's the way I want to manifest wealth in my life. From this place of really starting from the invisible, because queens have the power and the ability to see things not as they are, but as they could be. If you're looking at, I don't know how to make this happen, I don't know how to get more clients, I don't know how to get more money in, I don't know how to pay that bill, that's the masculine. If you can see it, then you'll believe it. If you want to access the power of the divine that is in you, not of you, you are going to see things not as they are. You're not going to look at that bank balance as it is. You're not going to look at your inbox as it is. You're going to see things not as they are, but as they could be. I used to imagine getting an email that my book was going to be published into Spanish, translated into Spanish. That's exactly what happened. That I got an email that said a Spanish publisher picked it up and the book got translated into Spanish. That's something else that happened this past year. So for those of you who are Spanish speaking or have Spanish speaking audiences, sisters, any of it, we'll put a link in the show notes where you can get my book in any of its form, Audible, hardcover. The paperback version also came out this year. This is not a shameless plug as much as it's a opportunity for greater content. My American publisher came to me and said that the book was selling so well that she wanted to come out in paperback. And for those of you who get the paperback version, you get an entire forward of brand new content that is not anywhere else. It's not in the audio and it's not in the hardcover because it was written this year, actually. Or, well, no, it was written in 2024, but it came out in the past 12 months is what I mean. So the point is, when you use your imagination to see things not as they are, but as they could be, you literally call into existence all of the desires that you are looking to manifest. And that doesn't happen on the perfect day, at the perfect timing, when the perfect amount of money is in the bank. That happens when you are able to show up for yourself, make no more excuses, and start calling your greatness in today. So let's pray. Dear God, we are so grateful for this opportunity to align ourselves with you, with your thinking, and remembering that all things are possible. We align ourselves in this moment that we get to begin again. We get to pick ourselves up mentally, emotionally, financially, spiritually, in any way to move our lives forward so that we can be of highest service, that we can enjoy our lives, that we can create the financial abundance and experience the freedom that you have designed for each and every one of us. We ask that you would illumine our minds so that we are shining brightly and that we are able to see any of the dark corners that do not serve. May we release them. May we let them go, knowing that our truest, most natural, most vibrant essence is whole, is peaceful, is powerful. And we pray all of this believing, amen, amen, amen. All right, my darlings. So, such a pleasure to be back on the podcast with you today. Check in and follow, subscribe, all the things. Make sure that you are on my email list because we also send out emails when new podcast episodes happen. So you can go to divineliving.com for all things that, or you can follow me on Instagram at Gina DeVee. If you don't yet have my book, or you know my book in either English, Spanish, audio, hard copy, or paperback would be a blessing in someone's life, click on the link in the show notes and maybe gift someone who needs a message of queenhood and empowerment. And I will look forward to being with you next time. Lots of love.